being here, my family and my friends. I so appreciate your support. I can't express it enough. Happy New Year. Good to see everybody here. Thank you very much. So before we get started, I'd like to ask you a question. How many of us here have children? How many of us here like children? Hey, that was just a joke. And how many of us were at one time a child? Good. That looks like all of us. And so that means it's a good thing for me because I have the right audience. This is a love story. And everybody loves a love story, right? I think so too. So let us now, in the truest sense of the word, come to the heart of the matter. I'd like you to recall the most frightening thing that's ever happened to you. The most frightening thing of which you had no control over and where the outcome depended on someone else. And now I'll tell you what happened to me. In the summer of 1984, I uprooted myself from my family, my friends, my home, my life as I knew it, married a German man, and I moved to his country. I didn't understand the language at all. And I knew no one other than my husband, Helmut, and these little incidentals were okay because we were young and in love and we were overjoyed with excitement because we were going to have a baby. I had all my regular appointed prenatal checkups. I had all of them. And they all revealed that everything was fine with me and our baby. As a matter of fact, to this very day, I still have the prenatal printout of Mark's heart rate when he was a fetus, 2 months old. I still have this to this very day, and it showed that his heart rate was strong and steady and normal. So when he came into the world with 10 fingers and 10 toes and these great big almond eyes, I was ecstatic. Upon my release from the hospital 12 days after his delivery, the doctors told Helmut that they'd made an appointment for us for the following day at the University Clinic of Cologne Pediatric Hospital with the professor who was the chief cardiologist. And this appointment was made because the doctors weren't sure if Mark's if Mark's skin color had an off tone, and if it did, if that was perhaps because of my skin color. Now, sure that everything was fine, I didn't want to go to this appointment. I had 9 months of prenatal checkups. I had my baby in my arms. And in Germany, this land of gingerbread houses and Christmas markets, I was certain that this Christmas, my very first Christmas in Germany, would be the most exciting of my entire life. And then I decided that maybe this extra checkup was just the German way of doing things, and that we should go. After all, the doctors kept telling Helmut, there's no need to worry, it's just a checkup. And so we went. So now I'd like to read to you from the chapter entitled, what is the chapter called? Something's Wrong. And Helmut and I are sitting with the professor, and he's making his initial examination from Mark. Can I have this a little higher? Am I going to do something wrong, Michelle, if I... because I'm feeling I have to bend over. And thank you, honey, no worries. It's a little bit too. That's better. Yeah, okay. So, I wanted to reach out and tap the professor on the shoulder and ask, Doctor, so what is it exactly that you're looking for? How many times have you done this? Why is it taking so long? Why haven't we been told by somebody, by anybody, why we're here? Do all newborn babies in Germany get this procedure? And is this the last stop? And what's that little dot pulsating there? But I didn't dare. He had an impenetrable aura, reserved, cool as granite. Maybe it was his title that stopped me in my tracks. Maybe one shouldn't speak with the professor unless spoken to. Perhaps it was his crisp white doctor's coat. And then out of nowhere came the question of etiquette between doctor and patient. Is there such a thing? And if there is, how does it work? Should my questions wait until the end of the exam? Would it be rude to ask for an explanation during? Would it irritate? Would it make him angry? And then there was the language matter. I didn't know if he understood English, and if he didn't, the resulting chopped up English and disjointed German, did I understand him, did she understand me, just simply was not worth the headache. I wasn't up to Germanic aerobics. Just let him get on with it, I told myself. In a little while, this will all be over. He's going to tell you that everything's fine anyway, so just let him have his peace, and we can hurry, he can finish, and we can pack up and get out of here. And 30 minutes passed. I journeyed from the cradle to the grave. No one had said a word, and I was growing wearier by the minute. And aside from Mark's sweet murmurs and my whispers to him, an eerie, uncomfortable silence pervaded the room. It provided no indication of the volcano about to erupt. He continued to guide the scanner over Mark's chest. And then with his eyes still fixed on the monitor, his German accent thick and heavy, the professor finally uttered, "Was ich sehe, ist leider nicht gut." Smacking his palm to his forehead, his face twisted in pain, Helmut released an anguished sigh and slumped back in his chair. And I, trapped in a sudden heat of terror that ripped at my gut and weakened my bowels, I couldn't have screamed if I wanted to. I was defenseless against the "Was ich sehe ist leider nicht gut" that was ringing in my ears. I didn't understand the words, but Helmut's outburst destabilized me. It scared me senseless. Trying to keep myself under control, my voice broke. "What did you say, Helmut?" I sensed the professor's eyes on me. "Spricht Frau Deutsch? Does your wife speak German?" Helmut shook his head. "No," he said. And with his hand still to his forehead, his elbow now supported by the examination table, Helmut raised his free hand and groped for mine. He turned and looked up at me, and tears brimmed his eyes. He winced before he spoke, and when he finally did, his voice sounded as if it belonged to someone else. "Something's wrong," he whispered. Now, I didn't realize I had collapsed into my chair. Though Helmut was right next to me, close enough to comfortably hug me, I strained to see his face clearly. And when I could, I looked at him as I had never done before. He must have lost his mind. My breath was coming to me in little hitches. The flat of my left hand pressed against the heaving of my chest. What do you mean something's wrong, Helmut? The professor addressed me, his face wooden, his English unsteady. The baby is very sick. You must leave him here. We must watch him tonight. Tomorrow I will make more tests. My eyes drifted away from his face and lingered upon our son, my angel child, the manifestation of true love, of my wound, Helmut's and my everything. He must be kidding. My eyes locked with his. It was like looking down the barrel of a gun. What? What are you talking about? What do you mean leave our baby here? Why? What's the matter with him? No. For what? I'm not leaving my baby here. Helmut, tell him. Tell him we're not leaving Mark here. He's not sick. There can't be something wrong with him. Helmut, nobody ever said anything about him being sick. You were there. You know. Tell him to call the obstetrician. Tell him. The baby is so ill, he can die at any minute. The professor cut me off. His words reverberated like ricochets around the room. I froze. Time stood perfectly still. Staring blankly into his face, I could feel myself helplessly falling through space, slowly, ever so slowly, toppling into an abyss. My baby is so ill, he could die at any minute. I looked at his face in utter disbelief, dumbfounded. I felt faint, as I'm sure you can imagine. And for the very first time that I could ever remember, I was speechless. The room fell silent, and I fell over the edge. But eventually, my outburst quieted down. I had come to the realization that no matter how much I screamed and cried, these people, these doctors, could not all be fools. My hysterics could not change the prognosis. Overcome by shock, I struggled to stay inside my skin. If I breathed deeply and slowly, perhaps I could stop the room from spinning. Concentrate. I had to try and get a grip on myself. There was something extremely serious going on here concerning our baby. And for him, if for no other reason, I had to pull myself together now. Now, in this time, welcome ladies, in this time, Dr. Gielor had been summoned by the professor, who was called in because he could speak, and he was the only doctor there on staff who could speak fluent English. And it appears to be very serious, Dr. Gielor said. I stumbled. What appears to be very serious? The situation with the baby's heart. So, what appears to be so serious about it, I said. From the ultrasound examination the professor made, there appeared to be some anomalies. I blew and wiped my nose. What are anomalies? Irregularities, abnormalities. Okay? Like what? Well, instead of 4 chambers to the heart, it appears that he only has 2. I see. I didn't see anything. But we'll know tomorrow after the heart catheterization, he said. Okay? His words hung in the air for a time while I tried to weigh their meaning. I had no idea what he was talking about. Heart catheterization, I repeated. We looked in on Mark before we left, and a wave of relief washed over me to see no apparent sign of distress in his unconsciousness. He was in a deep, peaceful sleep. This despite the medicine flowing through the tube intravenously in his arm and the high-pitched tone of the monitors and the cables snaking out from underneath his clothes. Thank God all this didn't seem to dramatically disturb him. It nearly killed me. Looking down at my flesh and blood lying there in that crib, I could not believe my eyes. And so on the way to the clinic the next morning, we were told that they would leave Mark in the hospital. They would make more tests, as I said. And on the way to the clinic the next morning, my spirits were not high, but for some reason I thought everything would be okay. At least better than the dire predictions from the day before. So no, I wasn't waiting for the hammer to fall, really. In fact, I even thought that the results of the catheter examination would show that things weren't so bad after all. I mean, everybody can make a mistake, and perhaps the findings were not as bad as the professor first thought. It'll be okay, I told myself. Don't worry, Tracie, you had all the checkups. It won't be this bad. It won't be this bad. The catheterization took place later that morning. Due to the abnormalities, the procedure itself was difficult, and its results nothing less than horrifying. The professor, Helmut, and I sat in a room, huddled together at a very small table. The results of the catheterization revealed multiple serious congenital cardiac malformations. Imagine that. The results of the cath revealed multiple serious congenital cardiac malformations with a single atrium and a single ventricle and pulmonary atresia where there was no connection between the heart and the pulmonary arteries. And having no main pulmonary artery, there existed basically the absence of a normal cardiac structure. Our son's tiny internal organs were simply confused. And this confusion is known in the medical community as heterotaxy syndrome. Essentially, Mark's precious heart was comprised of 2 chambers rather than 4. Basically, only half of his heart. His oxygen level is around 40 to 50%, the professor said.